We've become the third largest startup nation in the world, and our ambition is now to make it the number one in the next 5 years. And for that to happen, I think the momentum has now been set in through this startup Mahakumbh. If women don't become great startup entrepreneurs, India will never be able to grow. Indian pension funds, Indian insurance companies, high net individuals, Indian corporates must put money into the Indian startup movement.
There are fallouts also in certain companies.
So two things I've been stressing. One is good corporate governance, and there must be orderly exits by VC firms. In the long run, startups must become great companies of tomorrow. You need many startups in government. I've been a startup in government. I constantly look at doing new things, new innovative things.
Thank you, Mr. Kant. Finally, I made it to you. I made it to you after long and rightfully at the right time. It is the Mahakumbh Startup 2024, a great ecosystem being created to bring together all the stakeholders. You have been the man who started, who has always promoted Startup India, Stand Up India, Invest in India. How do you relate to this whole idea of Startup India?
Well, it's a phenomenal feeling because when the Prime Minister initially launched it, on January 16th in 2016, we just had about 150 startups. Today there are 125,000 startups. There are 450 incubators. We've done over $350 billion worth of investments. So India has really gone a long way. If one sector where India has really made a breakthrough is that we've become the third largest startup nation in the world. And our ambition is now to make it the number one in the next 5 years of the government. As the Prime Minister has said, when he comes in, we should make it the biggest, number one ecosystem in the world. And for that to happen, I think the momentum has now been set in through this startup Mahakumbh.
Mr. Kant, if I may ask you very simple words, what do you understand by startup? Because people were doing business in India for decades. We have been doing that. Do you relate it only to digital India having a direct connection with the startup India? Because that is how we marry the two concepts of business and digitization concept.
So startup is about innovation. It can be deep tech. It's about disruption. And startup is also digital. So what has happened in India is that India has done a lot of disruption through digitization, and that digitization led to a number of startups getting into, real-time fast payments. Then they went in for actually cashless credit. They went into stock markets, wealth creation, all through digitization, and then into insurance. But number of startups have done work in the field of agriculture. Number of startups have done innovative work in healthcare, in education. And I think that's where the real opportunity lies. But a lot of startups have done work in manufacturing, in AI, many areas of growth. So the opportunity really lies in India in areas of transforming agriculture, health, education, nutrition. If we are able to transform that, then the market is not 1.4 billion people, it's the next 4 to 5 billion people of the world whom we'll be transforming.
Do you think it will disrupt the businesses that have been existing, or they have to transcend to collaborate and work with the, the new generation building this up and the old generation trying to cope with the startup boom that has come around in the last few years?
So startups do very unique things, they do novel things, they do innovative things, they do disruptions things. Large companies become very status quoist. They look at balance sheets, they lack that energy and the dynamism which young startups bring in. And therefore, many large companies actually get into the business of financing startups. Many start companies open their own startups. In automobile, many large companies have opened their own startups. But many big companies actually acquire startups, so invest in startups. And that is because they want to be a part of the rapidly disrupting world. This is critical for innovation. And this is, if you look at automobile, for instance, I mean, the world is moving from combustion vehicle to electric vehicle, which means that You will have to then do battery storage. You will have to do new manufacturing.
We have hydrogen cells.
Yeah, whole range of new areas of growth.
So I also want to understand in terms of the investment when we are talking about even in the startup ecosystem, we had in the initial days of the startup companies coming in, a lot of foreign fund used to come in to support them. Now a local fund generation is also being propelled. So is that important that we have our local fund generation to support the startups in India and not to depend on foreign funds only to back them up to become big?
No, very critical, because even today 75% of the funding coming into the startup movement is coming from abroad. Indian pension funds, Indian insurance companies, high net individuals, Indian corporates must put money into the Indian startup movement. And that is the way for India to grow. It's very important that Indian money must reach Indian startups.
Why did we take so long, do you think, or we did not take long, if I can say, correct it, to come to this whole energy where the youth felt like, okay, now I can do my business? Is that we have overridden the fear and suddenly become like, we can have our own business and take the risk in the market and not wait for a job to fall on our lap?
So look at Silicon Valley, for instance. I mean, startups flourish because students from universities go and do new businesses. There is an easy flow of money which takes place. There are new ideas being generated. So we have to, what we've been able to create is young people from academic institutions getting into new disruption. We now need to create a larger flow of resources for them. We also need to ensure that not merely some universities, but all IITs, all IIMs, and all triple IITs have incubators.
Okay.
They should all do constant hackathons. They should always encourage young students to do disruption. That's how the system will grow and evolve. So we are, if you want to be the #1 nation in the world on startups, which is what our ambition is, we should ensure that we are able to get into deep tech. We are able to have more patient capital, because deep tech requires a lot of patient capital. And we should also have a lot of Indian money flowing in here. And we should have many more women entrepreneurs, as the Prime Minister has said today.
Why do you say so? Why do you encourage women?
Because 50% of our population is women. If women don't become great startup entrepreneurs, India will never be able to grow. We are talking about India growing at 9 to 10% for 3 decades. And that young energy, new vibrancy, new dynamism of the startups should actually enable India to grow. And that will only happen if there are many more women entrepreneurs.
Do you ever fear that this whole aspiration to become the unicorn, or this has become the new, not a trend word, but startups coming up, there are fallouts also in certain companies? It might be due to some bad decisions or learning on their way.
So 2 things I've been stressing. One is good corporate governance, which must be done. Good audit, good financial management is important. And second, my view is that there must be orderly exits by VC firms, so that valuation should not become the end objective. It should be good business opportunities, because today's startup is tomorrow a leading company.
Okay, you look at them growing into giants.
Infosys was once a startup which has become a great company. So we should think of producing 1,000 Infosys in India to grow. And that would require very mature leadership of young entrepreneurs. Young entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs are constantly doing innovative and disruptionist things. But they have to make great companies. In the long run, startups must become great companies of tomorrow.
Does a founder have a role to play? What are the qualities you think a founder of a startup should have?
The founder of a company has a great role to play. He must be seasoned, he must be matured, he must be innovative, he must be a risk taker. But more than anything else, he must be a great leader to produce a great company in the long run.
We see all these qualities in you, honestly. Had you ever been a person in your life who thought, I want to do a business of a kind, you're into nation building?
So you need many startups in government. I've been a startup in government. I constantly look at doing new things, new innovative things in
I
government.
totally believe that. But before I have to let you go, I have one more question, a larger macro question to ask you. Is you have always been part of the think tank, nation building, starting the ideas which has led the country ahead. Where are we heading? We always look to, you said that we are in the situation we don't need to ape the West now. But in order to go to the higher economic numbers, do we need to go and follow the rules of some of the developed countries or the ones doing good in economy like China? Do we need to find the reasons why they made it, or can we compare our economic growth with them?
No, I said that there is a great sense of national pride today. We have started believing in ourselves. We have shed our colonial mindset. We've do not ape the West, and that means that we must find solutions for India, which then become applicable to the rest of the world. That is important.
Did you find anything inspiring from other nations that we should
No, we
definitely
should benefit
adapt?
from best practices all over the world. Every country has good practices, from Brazil to South Africa to every single country has good practices. We should incorporate the best practices in the world and then adapt them to Indian condition and Indianize them.
One memory, now I can't let you go without talking about G20, exceptionally different experience that the world has seen India through because of the G20 organized with your guidance. How do you look at the G20 experience in your life? Was it also one of a kind, or was it one of the great things you've done?
No, it was a
at the
unique
moment?
experience negotiating with all the countries and all the Sherpas. It was a tough process to get negotiation on all the key challenges confronting the world, to get a consensus on 83 paras, especially Russia-Ukraine para, where even the United Nations has not been able to succeed, was a huge challenge. We succeeded. We succeeded because of risk-taking, hard work, determination, and the fact that we had the stature and standing of the Prime Minister behind us, who wanted us to be ambitious, be inclusive, and be decisive.
Did we try to brand India somewhere? Because youngsters do have this thing. Are we trying to brand India in a different pattern, that we are there or get identified? Because we've always been there. Were we lost in the crowd of the global geopolitical
So the Prime
situation?
Minister has already branded it as Viksit Bharat and Shashakt Bharat. That is a developed country and a strong country. So we should go with that.
And leave us with 5 thoughts that you think the youth today, you relate with the youth.
I think you should have vision. You should have determination. You should constantly innovate. You should constantly think afresh. And also, all youth must learn to play sports, have extracurriculars. It's very important to sweat it out and lead a very healthy life. That's important.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kant, for very quickly helping us go through all your perspectives and thoughts in a very quick chat.
Thank you.